Ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome to our news bulletin for tonight, read by me, Lamasayas. In an interview with the American CBS channel, President Bashar al-Assad said we would do anything to prevent another crazy war in the region. In response to the case, if Syria is exposed to aggression, President al-Assad said, "We do not discuss this issue as a government, but we discuss the repercussions, which is more important because the consequences can sometimes be more destructive than the strike itself. The demolition that an American strike will cause will not be more destructive than the causes by the terrorists." President al-Assad said any strike will directly support al-Qaeda linked to groups like Jabhat al-Nusra and the Islamic State in Iraq and the Levant. "We are against any weapons of mass destruction, whether chemical or nuclear," President al-Assad stressed. He recalled that Syria had submitted a proposition to the UN in 2001 on rendering the Middle East as an area free of weapons of mass destruction, which was then opposed by the USA. "We have not signed any agreement on proliferating chemical weapons," President al-Assad said, "because Israel, that occupies our land, possesses weapons of mass destruction and has not signed that agreement." President al-Assad emphasized that using chemical weapons is ethically equative to a nuclear strike, for at the end of the day, any form of killing is killing and any massacre is nothing but a massacre. Sometimes thousands of hundreds of thousands are killed with very preemptive weapons, the president added. "We do not discuss the issue of presence of chemical weapons in the media because we have not said whether we possess or do not possess such arsenal," the president pointed out. "This is a Syrian issue and a military issue that we do not discuss in the media with anyone," His Excellency emphasized. The Russian Foreign Ministry today declared that international experts have presented convincing evidence showing that the images of the victims of the alleged chemical attack in Damascus suburbs on the 21st of last month were fabricated. The ministry was quoted by Russia Today website as saying that the international experts presented such evidence about the attack during the 24th session of the Human Rights Council in Geneva. It is to be noted that Syria, in accordance with an agreement signed with the UN, had allowed the UN inspectors team access into Damascus suburbs to verify the use of chemical weapons by the terrorist groups, as the US and its allies hesitated to accuse the Syrian government without waiting the results of the investigation. Deputy Prime Minister, Foreign and Expatriates Minister Walid Muallim has said that during his talks with his Russian counterpart Sergei Lavrov, the latter presented an initiative on chemical weapons. In a press statement from Moscow, Al-Muallim added that the Syrian Arab Republic welcomed the Russian initiative out of the Syrian leadership's keenness on Syrian citizens' lives and security of the country, and on the basis of the Syrian government's confidence in the wisdom of the Russian leadership and the President Vladimir Putin and his efforts to prevent the American aggression against the Syrian people. Syria's stance has been voiced in the wake of the proposals declared by Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov on putting the chemical weapons in Syria under international supervision to avoid the American military strike. Lavrov had appealed in a press statement to the Syrian leadership not only to reach an agreement on putting the chemical arms warehouses under international supervision, but also on destroying them and joining the international organizations of prohibiting chemical weapons. Lavrov said Moscow is working with Syria on a plan to implement the Russian initiative. Iranian President Hassan Rouhani has asserted that in recent days hope has been strengthened in not launching a war against Syria, as the United States of America had been threatening, warning that if there is a war on Syria, then its instigators will play dearly. In a speech today to all Friday imams across the country, Rouhani said that Iran's endeavors concentrated mainly on avoiding the war on Syria. In a joint press conference with his Libyan counterpart Mohammed Abdelaziz in Moscow today, Lavrov said his country is working with Syria to prepare a plan to implement the Russian initiative on putting chemical weapons under international supervision. Lavrov added that work is underway to implement the plan in cooperation with the UN, the Security Council's members, and the Organization on Prohibiting Chemical Weapons. Lavrov said the UN inspection team should return to Syria to complete their work and submit a full report to the UN Security Council. China has expressed its welcome and support for the Russian initiative to put the chemical weapons in Syria under international supervision, as long as this step would pave the way for a political solution to the crisis in the country and help preserve peace and security in Syria. Leader of the Democratic majority at the American House of Senate, Senator Harry Reid, has said that the initial voting scheduled at the House tomorrow, Wednesday, on a draft bill that allows a military strike has been postponed following the Russian initiative on chemical weapons in Syria. On his part, American President Barack Obama said the Russian proposal is a development that may be positive in the conflict, promising to deal with it in a serious way. Obama said he was not confident over the Congress support for him regarding the Syrian file. The American president added that his Secretary of State John Kerry will discuss this initiative with his Russian counterpart in Moscow. Meanwhile, a new opinion poll in the U.S. conducted by the New York Times Daily and the CS News channel has revealed the opposition of the sweeping majority of American citizens of any aggression on Syria. Prime Minister Dr. Wael Halaqi asserted that Syria is committed to having the best relations with the UN and its organizations and a strategic partnership with them. During a meeting with the UN Coordinator for Humanitarian Relief and Security in Syria, the UN Development Programme representative Yaqub Al-Hilo, Al-Halaqi said that the solution presented through the political program approved by the Syrian government is the only safe way out of the crisis in Syria, which would lead to national dialogue in the country without foreign interference or dictation. For his part, Al-Hilo hoped that the sound of reason and wisdom will prevail at the international level regarding the crisis in Syria, asserting that the call for war is losing adventure and Syria will overcome the ordeal thanks to the strength and determination of its people. In Homs, special Syrian Arab army units captured a Mitsubishi car carrying weapons and ammunition near Al-War neighborhood. The driver of the car was soon arrested. The seized weapons included war rifle, sniping guns, mortar guns, and an anti-tank rocket, in addition to medical material, religious books about Salafist, and large amount of explosive, including 30 explosive devices containing the high-exploding C4 substance, gunpowder, bags, and fuses. In Egypt, Egyptian security sources said 9 armed militants were killed and 10 others arrested during the third day of the extended crackdown south of Sheikh Zayed and Rafah in Sinai Peninsula, as 210 dens were destroyed and 76 houses the militants were hiding, in addition to arms and ammunition they were using. This all comes within the broad military operation conducted by the combat groups affiliated to the Egyptian Armed Forces and the Central Security, supported by a heavy air coverage of helicopters to execute the biggest security operation in north of Sinai, raiding the hideouts and dens of the terrorists and arresting the Takfiri armed elements and the outlaws in the villages of Sheikh Zayed and Rafah. A clash between gunmen and smugglers in the Yemeni province of Taz has led to a fire inside a car loaded with weapons from Turkey, revealing weapons smuggling operations conducted secretly of Turkish ships. Those smugglers were driving a convoy of 3 cars loaded with weapons on the road to Directorate Al-Wazaya in the province after unloading a huge load of Turkish weapons from a large Turkish ship at dawn yesterday in Midi Port, one of the directorates of Hijab Governorate, northwestern Yemen, amid secrecy and apparent collusion of the security services. Informed security or sources have confirmed that the process of emptying the Turkish ship in the darkness is not the first operation took place in Midi Port without announcing the content of what those Turkish ships carried. Finally, ladies and gentlemen, the Turkish police killed a young demonstrator, 22 years old, yesterday evening in Antioch by a tear gas hand grenade which hit him in the head. The youth was among the demonstrators who gathered to commemorate one of the victims of the protests against the Turkish government last June. Several Turkish cities yesterday witnessed popular protests against the policies of the government of Recep Tayyip Erdogan as the Turkish police suppressed them using water mixed with chemicals against the demonstrators in the city of Adana and the region of Tozlu-Tashire in Ankara. And that's the end of our news bulletin for tonight. Thank you for kindly listening. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome to a new episode of our weekly business program, Syria Today. Forecast to produce 62,000 tons of almonds in Homs. Agriculture Department in Homs estimates the production of almond crop for the current agriculture season at 62,893,000 tons. Head of the Statistic Department in the Directorate, Engineer Ihsan Aktash, said in a statement that the total number of trees planted with almonds in all areas of governorate is about 22 million trees. It is noteworthy that Homs City is ranked first among the governorates in terms of the production of almonds and the size of the spaces and the number of trees, which occupy 73% of the total cultivated area in Syria. Converting agricultural food products for functional foods. Head of Trade Policies Department at the National Center for Agricultural Policy in the Ministry of Agriculture and Agrarian Reform, Engineer Mahmoud Babili, said that the center prepared a work paper on the prospects of functional food production in Syria and exporting it to the world market. Engineer Babili added in a statement that the paper monitors the many functional advantages that our local agricultural products enjoy. It also refers to the possibilities of converting some of the agri-food products to functional food after treatment. The paper also presents deliberately proposals to market these products in the Russian market. The paper recommends studying the possibilities of export of functional food that benefit health, heart, treating problems of obesity to Russian market, and studying the possibility of exporting Syrian dairy after being processed as functional foods for this market. Finally, the paper recommends benefits from the free trade agreements signed with friendly countries to promote the trade of functional food.
Damascus Radio presents News and Views. U.S. President Barack Obama circulated a series of hollowed pretexts while he replied to the questions put by journalists in the conference that occurred after the conclusion of the G20 summit. Along with the all-out pretexts, Obama could avoid the tone of threatening when he announced that he would launch an aggression without the approval of the UN Security Council. In other words, he will decide alone to cause a true world catastrophe, justifying his hideous deed with the protection of American national interests. On the other hand, he merely leaned on a fabricated illusory file, the scenario of which was composed by the Zionist lobby group, which applies a tighter grip over the American political decision ever since the invasion of Iraq. Obama is waiting for the Congress decision to approve his heinous strike against Syria, whilst he declared overtly he will use force against a sovereign state in order to clean the dirt of George W. Bush, however, with words, not deeds. He already earned the fake Nobel Prize for Peace, which prepared him to push his violence farther than that of Bush Jr., who lent his ugly ears to the Shah that engineered his war against Iraq. Now, with the same pretext and with the same Shah, Obama triggers an internecine war against Syria. The same Shah seeks the destruction of the world just for the sake of Israel's security. Those evil Shah are a bunch of Zionist Jews who support Israel, and they are claimed to be political experts in the American government. However, they seek to back Israel on the account of Arab blood and, unfortunately, in cooperation with some Arab slaves and hirelings. They all work on implementing an agenda that contains one single aim: Israel's security. Syrian Local Press Review. The papers published in Damascus today highlighted the following headlines and news items. President Bashar al-Assad is interviewed by the American channel CBC. In the interview, the president says the current American administration adopts the same concept of Bush's administration, however, it employs different accessories. Syria welcomes the Russian initiative vis-à-vis the chemical weapons, taking into consideration the keenness on the Syrian citizens' souls and safety. 16 persons fall martyrs while terrorists launch mortar shells on the establishment of construction and building, in addition to the Traffic Directorate branch in the countryside of Damascus and Homs. In another development, the Syrian armed forces eliminate gatherings which belong to Al-Qaeda in several areas. The forces destroy anti-aircraft cannons as well as caches of rockets and cars loaded with weapons. Assistant Regional Secretary of the Ba'ath Arab Socialist Party, Hilal, meets the cadres of Al-Ba'ath Party in Suwaida and says that the Syrian people must confront the Takfiri thought and further care for the principles and development. And during his meeting with the resident representative and coordinator of the UNDP on the United Nations Development Programme, Prime Minister Wael Halqi confirms Syria's constant keenness on establishing the best relations with the institutions of the United Nations. The front page editorial in Al-Ba'ath Daily says that the criminal image of the West was not depicted by the West's enemies, rather it depicted itself. Freelance reports in the United Kingdom indicate that an agreement has been concluded between Obama and Cameron before the British House of Commons foiled the scheme of Britain's participation in the U.S. new war. The paper says that one of the reasons behind the war is to hinder the UN inspection process, which the U.S. quite realizes that it will refute its claims. Perhaps further, the inspection report could involve Washington in the fabricated attack, which had been launched by armed groups using the chemical weapons, the paper concludes. That was a review of the Syrian local press issued in Damascus this morning.
You are still tuned to Damascus Radio. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Before signing off, here is a quick look at our news summary. In an interview with American CBS channel, President al-Assad says any aggression on Syria will directly support al-Qaeda-linked terrorist groups. Russia affirms that convincing evidence has been presented by international experts showing that the images on the chemical attack in Damascus suburbs were fabricated. In a joint press statement in Moscow, Foreign Expatriates Minister Walid Maalem says Syria welcomes the Russian initiative according to the Syrian leadership's keenness on Syrian citizens' lives and the security of the country. Iranian President Hassan Rouhani asserts that in the recent days hope has been strengthened that Washington would not launch an attack against Syria, warning that if there is a war on Syria, then the instigators would pay dearly for that. China expresses its welcome and support for the Russian initiative to put the chemical weapons in Syria under the international supervision. Prime Minister Dr. Wael Halaqi asserted that Syria is committed to having the best relations with the UN and its organizations and a strategic partnership with them. And in Egypt, the Egyptian security sources say 9 armed militants are killed and 10 others arrested during the third day of the extended crackdown south of Sheikh Zayed and Rafah in Sinai. With this news summary, we come to the end of English transmission for tonight from Damascus Radio. Please join us again at the same time with the same frequency. Till then, we wish you all the best and a very good night.